Once you can do everything you've heard about today, what does it mean for how we live? So I'm delighted to have as the first speaker the Deputy Mayor of Barcelona. And the background to this is the Fab Lab in Barcelona staged a bloodless coup and took over the city. And so representing that, the plotters, we have Tony.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for being here at such an hour. I think that the real challenge for me is talking to you at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If I achieve not having anyone sleeping in 10 minutes, I'm going to go back to Barcelona very happy. So thank you for being here. The truth is that the presentation wasn't meant to be called Barcelona 5.0, but this is something that we decided in the last minute. The presentation was meant to be called Barcelona from Pito to Lido. This is something that you're going to learn later. Barcelona 5.0 takes us to the quantum leap that we want to make as a city. But you know, after having heard these guys talking about printing DNA or making the revolution with a mathematical formula or building things, I'm just a talking man. I'm a politician. So what the hell am I doing here? This is something that this man over here has something to say. But I'm going to try to explain you something that is meaningful. I'm going to tell you a story. I mean, we politicians, we are storytellers. If they are true, then they are meaningful. Something that...
Stories don't go too far forward so that people watching around the world.
Oh, okay. Do you see me? People from around the world? Yeah? Okay.
The little window on the side there is what...
Vale. Okay, thank you. The first thought that came to my mind when I wanted to talk about to you was what the city was supposed to be built for. And if we go back to the old centuries, we see that there's been an evolution in the city. The city was a place where we used to live. The city is a machine. The city is one of the tools that the mankind invented, one of the most magnificent tools that we invented. But it was a machine for living. And then we invented the city, which was a machine for producing and consuming. This is something that we have to keep in mind because in here we have the key for everything that we have to tell to you this afternoon. Barcelona has gone through several steps. In here you have 4 very important steps in the history of my city. We're going to take Barcelona as an example. Barcelona is a product of the Middle Ages in Europe. We kind of lived very well between the 14th and the 18th century, the beginning of the 18th century, when some guys that you know very well, the Spaniards and the French, decided that they wanted to take over our country, and they did it very well, by the way. So we lost the war against them, and in 1716, we kind of started our history again. If you see these 4 steps, you're going to see that there's an acceleration of history in the last century. So we have 400 years in the first step. We have around 150 years in the second step. We have 75 years in the third step. And today things are going very fast. I've just got news in my telephone here saying that the Dow Jones has slumped 400 points this afternoon, which means that history is a kind of changing our life in a daily basis nowadays. So if we keep stuck in that history, we're going to lose pace. So the question is, where the hell are we taking our cities nowadays? Because if we just look at history, we are lost. Hang on. But perhaps we have the answer in history also, in order to see where do we have to go. This is Barcelona. Let me show it to you very well. This was Barcelona. It was Barcelona for almost 1,000 years. Between the Middle Ages until 1856, Barcelona was in just 10 square kilometers. Why? Because we were not allowed to grow. When the Spaniards won the war against us, they decided that we couldn't tear down the walls. So everything happened within those walls, which was something that made us think a lot. Because in the old days, in the 12th century, in the 13th century, in the 14th century, we knew that we had guilds, confederation, pacts, concentration, and change, and we did another thing. We built a confederative system that went out through the Mediterranean Sea. But things happened within those walls. The next one, please. Then they didn't allow us to grow. They built the safety ring, and they provoked an effect that you're going to see right now. Next one. Everything happened there. Barcelona is the only city in the world that went through the Industrial Revolution under the 42nd parallel. It means that below Paris, Barcelona is the only city that went through the Industrial Revolution with all its impact. So we had all these things within 10 square kilometers. Insanity, people, politics, collapse, public services, cosmopolitanism, Industrial Revolution, analphabetism, everything happened there. But we had to grow in a certain way. We had to grow because the only thing that we did was reproducing the old system with modernity. Next one, please. The most important thing that happened in those walls is that we had that Industrial Revolution, which means that we were able to reproduce modernity within those walls. But modernity at that time meant something that you're going to see later related to the Peto model. Remember that word, Peto. Next one. All of a sudden, modernity came through. And we had the prophets of modernity. We had Karl Marx, which was a nice guy. We had Picasso, who, by the way, grew up in Barcelona and invented Cubism and modernity in my city. We had Einstein, who was once in Barcelona. He never invented anything in Barcelona, but we were very influenced by him, as you know. We had Freud, who is still working my brain. And we had Groucho Marx, who is still working in my life. But we had another very special guy in Barcelona. This guy was called Ildefons Cerdà. He is the real prophet of my time and my city. This guy was an engineer. And he lived in Barcelona. In fact, he came from the outskirts of Barcelona. I have a friend here called Vicente Guallart. He's a drawer. He's a drawing man. But he usually goes there to ride horses. He goes to where Ildefons Cerdà was born. And Ildefons Cerdà understood something. Even though all those things that you've seen happened within 10 square kilometers, and it was good, there was something very bad. He understood, thanks to most of these prophets, that life had to be better for people. And he was an engineer. And he decided to improve the life of the people living in Barcelona. And what did he do? He tried to apply his technical skills to improve life of people, and he invented urbanism. Think about that. How many sciences have been invented in the last 2,000 years? 10? 12? I don't know, Neil. Not many. And he invented urbanism. He invented the word for the sake of improving people's life in his city. And Ildefons Cerdà did what you're going to see in a minute. You see the old ring? All of a sudden, he invented a new city, 10 times bigger than the one he used to live in. And we in Barcelona live in this city right now. This is a city that you saw before, the city in which we live. A city that hasn't got a center, a city that is neuronal, as you see. All those neurons are very tiny cities, related one to the other. And this is a product of a wonderful burst combining the socialist utopy with the bourgeois capitalist revolution. This is something that was kind of exploded by the technology that was available at that time. And if you are here thinking about Fab Labs, I mean, this is something that you have to start thinking about. You have a city in here, you have Lima here, and you have Barcelona, and you have Timbuktu, and you have Melbourne, and you have all those cities have to be thought in a new way. That's one of the messages I want to give you today, this afternoon. But the evolution of the city was taking us to discontinuity, something that wasn't the real aim, because we were stuck to the old pictures. So you see, the evolution during the 20th century, at least in Barcelona, was going through war, through the fascist dictatorship, through cultural genocide. We Catalan were submitted to that. Through slums, through social exclusion. We had lots of problems. And we tried to solve that. And we went through the democracy again, and we went through the Olympic Games, and we went at last, some years ago, through what we called the new pattern. And we invented the Forum of the Cultures, which was a disaster. We tried to do that. We tried to make a new model of the city based on the old picture. And the old picture was event-bound, building-bound, discontinuity-bound. There was no new narrative related to the city. We politicians that are meant to give a vision to the people, we were not able to give that vision of future to my citizen fellows. So we had to think about what we had to do. And we realized, next one please, that the solution was not on tourism, the solution was not in just architecture, the solution was not anymore in the old urbanism. The solution had to be somewhere else. Next one. So we discovered, thanks to some guys over here, that the old city model, the one that we have right now here beside us, is based on a pattern that we could call the Pito pattern. Cities, think about Barcelona with its walls. The cities import products and export trash. We are net importers of products and all kinds of things. We kind of combine them, we generate things, and then we just export trash, generating the problem that we know that we are generating. So the new pattern has to be something new, self-sufficient, in which the city, conceptualized in a new way, thanks to your ability, thanks to your technological ability, has to drive us to the Dido model. A city in which we just import data. You can say data, you can say intelligence, and we export intelligence. This is a sharing model, this is an open model, this is an internet-based model, in which cities recuperate the sense of polis that polis, P-O-L-I-S, that we used to have in the old days, enhanced with the new technology. That's what we are trying to do right now in Barcelona. Next one, please. So we have invented something. As Neil said, I'm the Deputy Mayor of Barcelona, and I am the Deputy Mayor for what we call the urban habitat. Urban habitat is the addition of three very important concepts. Put all of them together. Urbanism, you remember the guy with the mustache, Cerdà, the prophet. Ecology, nature. And the third one is, some of you, technology, ITC. This is urban habitat. This is what provides us with a new, real pattern to build cities. But now we have the theory, and we have to go to the practical issue. So that's the way we will be able to do it. Next one, please. First of all, understanding that the city has to produce all the commodities that is consuming. We have to produce them, and we have to swallow them, we have to metabolize them, and we don't have to export any kind of trash to the outskirts of the city. So within the city, we will be able to produce and consume all what we need for living. energy, nature, mobility, research, technology, reuse of waste, services. Everything is going to happen within the boundaries of the city. Next one. Which will allow us to create what we need in order not to have this slope down of the Dow Jones Index. We want to produce a new productive model that will make us unbeatable for at least a new century. This is going to be a city of multiple speeds and scales. A city in which we will live at a human scale. We're going to live beside the place where we work. But the city is going to be hyper-connected to the world thanks to these connections that allow you to talk about printing DNA in here in Lima. This is the change of a scale that we are envisaging in Barcelona. Something that we are trying to do, 2 minutes, something that we're going to do with a network of, the next one please, Fab Labs. In Barcelona today we got 4 Fab Labs, 3.5 by the way, 3.5, but we're going to build something new in Barcelona. Next one. We're going to build a network of Fab Labs within the city, a factory of goods, knowledge, collaboration, exchange and invention, which means that we have already decided that Barcelona is not going to be a city with a lot of Fab Labs, but Barcelona, next one please, is going to become the first Fab city of the world. And we're going to go for it, because when we Catalans, thank you very much. When we go for something, we really go for something. And we know how to do things well. Next one. We know how to use talent and knowledge in order to win. Next one. We know how to produce goods and services. Next one, please. We know how to do beautiful solar houses. Next one, please. We're going to have many slow cities and a smart city as an attractor of talent and a producer of talent, just as we do when we play soccer, as you know. We're going to jump from the Fab cities to the Fab world, and that's something that we're not going to do, you're going to do for us all together, because that's going to save something that we need to save, which is democracy, laicism, a sense of society that we are keeping here today.
Any questions?
In the party, perhaps.
Yes, I would like to know if the city government is financing these Fab Labs, and is it done on a public-private system, or how do you support the creation?
Yeah, he's asking me whether the city government is financing the Fab Labs. Well, I have to say that, truly speaking, the Fab Labs have taken over the city. We went for the elections, and we won the elections a month and a half ago. So we're going to be, the Fab Labs are in the soul of the new government of Barcelona. But the model, and that's a very meaningful question, the model is going to be a public-private partnership. The worst news would be having the government making the Fab Labs. So the government is just going to coach the process. That we have, my vision, the way I understand politics is that we politicians are paid to offer visions to society. I like to say that. I'm paid to say, hey guys, I think that the way is over there. And if all of you follow me, I'm a good politician. If no one of you follows me, I'm a ridiculous man and I go to do something else. We have said to Barcelona, the way is that way, So what we're trying to do now is finding the correct people, and we have someone in here that's going to help us a lot to do that, to launch this process.
Okay, time for one more question.
FABC means a Fab Lab in every school?
Okay, question is not just districts, but what does it mean for schools?
Well, yeah, you're very. I mean, when we talk about a Fab Lab in each district, it means that the Barcelona districts are size-wise kind of an average of 110,000 people. But what we're trying to achieve is provoking having a Fab Lab by district, the schools, which are the key issue, because we think that Fab Labs are the, how do you call the professional, formación profesional, how do you say that? Son la formación profesional, professional training for the 21st century. So we think that we're going to have very tiny Fab Labs within each school in each one of the districts of Barcelona. So we're going to have a Fab Lab of reference in each district, and then we're going to have like grains of grape. We're going to have small, tiny Fab Labs in each school. So the link between the creativity of a Fab Lab with the creativity of the schools is going to be a key success factor for sure. See?
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
So we wanted to lead off with that rousing presentation and understand it means Barcelona is now a laboratory for everything we've been talking about all day in a very serious way. And there'll be events coming up there to fill in that. Now we're going to unpack some of the steps to what would it mean to go from cancel Barcelona 4.0 and launch Barcelona 5.0. In doing that, next I'm delighted to have Gary joining us from Cisco. Gary, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Good, and we hear you.
Yes, I can.
He's joining us via Skype. In a moment, we'll turn so you can see the screen and then the audience. Many of you are familiar with the Fab Academy graduating today. There was a question about schools and how this integrates with schools. Cisco's Networking Academy operates on I think it's fair to call it a stupendous scale for using emerging technology to do distributed education. So it's a great lesson, both technically in the infrastructure and organizationally in how you manage education on this huge scale. And so we're delighted to have Gary to tell us about that. So Gary, about 15 minutes and 5-minute discussions. So we're ready for you now.
Okay. Let me see if I sorry, I'm afraid I don't. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you and we're about to rotate you so you can see what we see.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'll assume the presentation is up as well.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just, we can just get somebody to advance what I say next, that'd be great. There's a couple of builds in this presentation, which we'll go through. Let me first start by saying thank you for the opportunity to present today. I apologize we weren't able to be present with you. But through the benefits of technology, we can try to do the next best thing here. What I wanted to do was talk a little bit about Cisco Networking Academy, some of the scale of our program, and some of the approaches we're taking in education, where we're driving some changes in education. So, as was mentioned, my name is Gary Cohn, and I'm the Director of Technical Advocacy for the Cisco Networking Academy program. And our primary function within my team is to help our instructor community around the world be as effective as possible in the classroom teaching students. And we currently have in the program about 22,000 instructors worldwide. So it's quite a large program. If we can go to the next slide. To give you an idea, the Networking Academy program is part of Cisco's corporate social responsibility initiatives. So it's our largest program of what we consider our responsibility as a company to give back to society. And as such, we don't charge for schools to participate in the program. Any school, any public institution or school that wishes to become a Networking Academy program can do so. We don't charge for our materials and curriculum to participate. We currently operate in 165 countries. We're very proud to say we have 1 million students engaged in the program this year. And nearly 4 million students have gone through the program and graduated in some capacity since we started the program 12 years ago. We really have a large degree of diversity. 165 countries create its own diversity. But we also have a large degree of diversity in the age of our students from age 12 through age 90. We have a fair mix of male and female student populations around the world. And we really see a lot of participation in students coming from all different walks of life in terms of their economic conditions, economic backgrounds, and some other areas. We're spending a lot of focus around the development of communities and getting our participants in Networking Academy to be able to work together in virtual communities in a better way. And I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. And our curriculum in these education institutions is used in a number of different education levels. So we have high-end universities that run Cisco Networking Academy as a program. We have high schools and secondary schools in the U.S. and other parts of the world that run the program. We also have a lot of nonprofit organizations that are doing development work, disaster recovery work, utilizing the program. And then finally, we have a number of other initiatives going on in second chance parts of the world, whether they're prisons or correctional facilities where people are studying networking as a way of improving their life after having some problems. If we can go to the next slide, this is just a quick view of that diversity geographically and our distribution of student population around the world, as well as some of the growth rates. So even though we're at 1 million students, we're still continuing to grow very healthily. So we are at a 10% annual growth rate in number of students, fastest growing in some developing parts of the world. For Latin America, we're looking at 18% of the student population, so a very large portion of the total student population, and a very healthy growth rate of 9%. In the next slide, we take a very, we're looking at the one titled the Comprehensive Educational Partnership. Is that the one we're on? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So the way we approach our program is it's a combination of providing curricula, managing relationships, providing a very high degree of infrastructure that supports the curriculum, and then our overall program design and methods, which we're very, very rich in data about students, about participation, about effectiveness in education. A little bit about the infrastructure. We currently have a larger, you can imagine Cisco as a company is a very large company, a very large e-commerce company, a very large footprint of internet services and capability. The Networking Academy program is actually larger in its server base than Cisco.com. We store over 2.5 terabytes of data. We run over 1 million assessments on students every month. And you can imagine having 1 million simultaneous students and 1 million assessments per month on average. It takes a large infrastructure and capability to do that. All of our tools and resources are accessible virtually over the internet. And our curriculum can also be downloaded and utilized locally for environments where bandwidth is limited or has some challenges. On the curricula side, is really where we focus the offerings that we give to schools around the world. If we go to the next slide, you'll start to see the first build here. We have a comprehensive online curriculum developed for each course. It's Flash-based. It's textual and flash-based, and is a fairly rich curriculum for teaching technology education to all different levels of education participants. We build this out one time. The curriculum is coupled with activities within the curriculum itself. One more click shows you a view of the simulation environment. So we have a very rich network simulation tool called Tracer that we have developed to be able to simulate simple, very complex networks, to allow students who are learning networking to build complex networks through a simulation tool, configure them, troubleshoot them. And intertwined in the curriculum are a series of activities which directly relate to what the students are learning and provide that simulation-based activities. We also require that every working academy give the students the opportunity to learn by hands-on, having access to hands-on lab equipment as well. So the curriculum incorporates simulation activities, and then we have labs that are written for real equipment in real scenarios, hands-on scenarios, for the students to reinforce those learnings in physical environment. So one more click gets us into, we can have comprehensive ways of assessing the performance along the way through quizzes and other click through chapter exams and rich set of assessments that we provide the schools to understand what to do. And then the last piece of this build is the feedback on assessments and the automatic grade application goes back to the instructor. So we'll provide an institution as a networking academy, online curriculum, a simulation environment for student activities. They build a lab pod for the students to learn on real equipment. We provide them the way in which they can assess the progress and knowledge of the students, culminating to the full classroom experience. So we can go to the next slide. This slide is called using the best of each approach. So what we're really moving forward with, and one of the most interesting parts of what Working Academy is driving broader education is we're taking this notion of having a simulation packet tracer and building a skills-based assessment, comprehensive skills-based assessment using that simulation environment. So rather than a multiple choice or written exam about the student, we're actually able to take this environment and create assessments which the student can participate in, gives a much richer view of what the student is learning as they progress through the program. So if we look at the next slide, and the first, we pull up the slide here where it says detailed environment. When a student goes through a skills-based assessment and package, the feedback given to both the student and instructor shows the various performance components and estimates the proficiency in these various areas based on how they progressed through the activity which the skills-based assessment was conducted. You then have a rating or a scoring of how much success there was with the specific assessment for the specific activity that you see on the right. We'll go one more build here. The instructor actually has the ability to look at the student's work product as they went through the assessment. He gets a very detailed view of how the student progressed through the activity. So you see on the right-hand side is a time-stamped student log. It shows the instructor every step-by-step the student took. But even more than that, if we forward one more view here, we can compare the student's activity that they conducted with a proposed answer topology, an answer solution, and have the system compare the student's approach to solving the problem with an ideal approach to solving the problem. And we can even, one more slide forward, we can even apply or document the comparisons between students' performance in the same classroom and students' approaches and performances in other academies across the world. So we're able to identify not only the students' performance and competencies, but we have a number of students making the same mistakes. It actually is indicative where the instructor may be struggling. We can offer the instructor information to help his or her students through those problems. If we go forward one more slide, you see the slide here that shows the EDA and visualization. We can even take this information and visualize a student's path through the problem solving. So the upper, you're not expected to read this, but the upper left diagram shows a student's progression through the activity, where there's a lot of back and forth of individual tasks which were repeated over and over again, as opposed to being replicated of problem solving, and a lot of work that was done in the left-hand corner compared to more streamlined and ideal approach in the bottom right-hand corner. So if these were the results of two different students, they may have come to the same answer. They may have solved a troubleshooting problem to a satisfactory level. You can start to rate the competence and understanding at different parts of problem solving based on the efficiency that the student has used to achieve results. So this notion of understanding not only assessing knowledge, written knowledge by the student through taking standard tests, actually really measuring the ability of a student to understand and apply concepts and have for the instructor a very rich and dynamic set of feedback is a major direction for us. We're finding in the education community is this is an example of where education would like to take assessment and apply this. Now, if we go to the next slide, where this really goes is our latest step, taking our simulation to a package tracer. The notion of building assessment within the activity and getting feedback. Now we've added a gaming layer called Aspire. So what the result is now we have a gaming that the students are able to play the game and test across the various activities and programs, initiatives to show what they know and how they're able to apply that in real-world situations by playing the game. So the students have gained some knowledge. They're playing the game. The game is assessing their application of that knowledge and directing them through either lower-level activities to enforce that knowledge or progressing them through higher-level activities to challenge them further. If we go forward one more slide, the game is interactive. It's scenario-based, has character-based files indicating, putting the students through the various activities and the ability to do this. One more slide to show you some of the things that we're evaluating in this gaming environment. It's not just application networking, but we're actually able to measure things like entrepreneurship capabilities, business sense, money management, troubleshooting, physical labor, and even as the game has you creating a small business, your reputation and your credibility in the community as you choose to solve different problems, the way you treat your customers. So the gaming layer is on top of the simulation, is on top of the assessment layer, which is on top of the simulation layer. And all of this is applied in the classroom. What we feel is a very enhanced learning experience for the student. Our hope is that yes, thank you. The different education environments will start to apply this type of thinking and this type of application for other learning subjects beyond networking. We're very willing to work with educational organizations to do that. So the last slide I have says partner model. We've grown this program from one academy to 10,000 academies around the world. I mentioned 22,000 instructors. And we're in the process of enhancing our business model, our distribution model, or how you scale these things. So we're learning a lot about how to grow, how to create open relationships, options to academies to participate. Going through quite a lot of effort to revamp our distribution model or go-to-market model for this. It's a current activity that we're in progress on, and it's really designed around the community is first, and participation in the community is the best way to reach all of our academies and ultimately impact all of our students. So that was my last slide, and I'm happy to take any questions, although I'm not sure how we'll be able to fit in the audience, but hopefully that information gives you a view of the Academy program, some of the things we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, a program with 20,000 instructors and 1 million students. It's a spectacular scale. Any questions? Comments? Oh. Gary, what you've accomplished is bigger than networking. It teaches networking, but it's a platform for managing an amazing number of students, faculty, and types of content. Is it going to grow beyond networking? Talk about the future.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that we're very willing to help organizations pursue initiatives past networking. As Cisco Systems and as our corporate social responsibility initiative, we've started to push into areas of healthcare education, or about technology education for healthcare and clinicians. And we're starting to move into a couple of areas around healthcare that we're driving. But we think that we're probably not the right organization to change those education principles around the world and in certain locales. And we're really looking for people who want to try to drive change in their subjects or in their areas to partner with us on that, because we don't think we can do it alone. We are pushing into healthcare in a significant way, and we're open to ideas on other parts of it.
And in fact, that's a good lead-in. We've had a number of interesting discussions with Cisco about linking all of this to the hands-on skills in the FabLab network is very complementary. So with that, well, thank you, and I'll try to turn the computer around so you can see the audience.
Okay. Great. Thanks so much. Well, hopefully next time I'll meet you in person.
Thanks for coming on. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
So first we have the rather rousing notion of remake a city, and then once you're done with that, remake a planet. We have this amazing example of a school with 1 million students, 20,000 teachers. And note something he only said in passing. Nobody accredits it. There's no formal accreditation by an accreditation body. And there's no connection to any existing schools as you know them. But the 1 million students studying and the people hiring them neither asks, what's the school and what's the accreditation? They ask, what do you know about networking? So it's really a ground-up invention of a new kind of school. That leads into the next topic is to do something on that scale. You need to align a lot of moving parts, and then you need to figure out what they're doing. You can't do it just by the seat of the pants, and that's what Betty will be talking about.
So, thank you. I'm really glad to be here. I'm presenting some work that's been done by Joel Kutcher-Gershenfeld. You'll notice the family resemblance. And he's the dean of the School of Labor and Employment Relations at the University of Illinois. And we've been doing some work over a period of time that deals with both the socio and the technical aspects. Often in Fab Labs, we get very concerned with the technical aspects of what we're doing. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how, in an environment like these that we've been hearing about, that are very exciting, how do you bring all these people together? It can't just be technology. And so I want to talk about the fact that the 21st century is demanding a new set of patterns, a new set of behaviors that we will need to learn and adapt to those changes and challenges that are surrounding us. The work that Joel has done points to some new ways to meet these changes successfully. And I want to start with an example. Today, everyone has shown us this shift from the 20th century to the 21st century. I think that's a very important message. In this slide, we introduce an example called the tragedy of the commons. And the reason that this slide is up here is because this is an example of a 21st century idea and something that has happened. You'll see the diagram over there. Look at this picture, because I want you to realize that is really a picture and not just a painting. And Garrett Hardin wrote about the tragedy of the commons in 1968 when he talks about the fact that if you follow the patterns of the 20th century, which is to optimize your individual success, then you are faced with catastrophic success. At least I call it catastrophic success, because you ruin the value of those resources that we hold in common. And so in the 21st century, we have to find a way to be successful without ruining those resources that we hold in common. We can't have a tragedy of the commons. And this picture that is up here is a picture that Garrett Hardin really enjoyed. I don't know that enjoy is the right word, but he appreciated it because if you see where there's dark spaces on this map, can you see the dark spaces on the map? Those are spaces where the pasture land in Africa have been fenced in. The sandy, dry spaces, the empty spaces that are no longer green, are the spaces that were held in common. So people utilize those spaces for their own individual gain, as you would. You grazed your cattle there. And that space then became virtually unusable. And so this tragedy of the commons is pretty important. The issue that we're working on here now to bring this back into what things that we understand is the fact that the inherited institutions that we have are inadequate for the task of avoiding this catastrophic success. We have institutions. Would you go to the next one, please? It's not going. Nope, there it is. These are 20th century systems going into the 21st century. And these systems all have patterns of behavior, patterns of institutionalization, patterns of rules and regulations, in many cases that are in a few cases that are very well developed, and totally inadequate for the challenges that are facing them today. You'll notice down here, which you can't see, this little one, there we go, is a map of the United States Fab Lab networks, and I complained because we're not all up there, and I was told that it's impossible to put all the dots in the tiny space. So if we've missed you, I'm sorry. And we also apologize for the fact that the research that we did was U.S.-centric. However, all of these systems expand outward into global systems, so it's not just a U.S.-centric map. One of the questions that we have to ask ourselves is how do we, as stakeholders, optimize the results that we're now wanting and demanding from these systems? And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the fact that there's a very big sense of change. We've had a series of rousing presentations and really good ideas that talk about the fact that the game is changing. The rules are changing. And I think all of us can probably sense that in our daily lives. There are lots of things happening that we no longer feel like we control, maybe, that we can shape. And so one of the issues that this lateral alignment piece will bring to us is this sense of how do we have greater control? How do we optimize what's going to happen in a different way? So could we go to the next one? So first of all, let me define lateral alignment for you. Lateral stakeholder stakeholder alignment is the extent to which interdependent stakeholders orient and connect with one another to advance their separate and shared interests. Now, it's a very concise definition, and let me unpack it just a tiny bit. You'll notice that it's interdependent stakeholders, people who depend on each other. Entities, organizations, countries, all have these more and more increasing numbers of interdependencies. They have to, in order to ensure that their interests are optimized, orient and connect with one another to advance these shared and separate interests. Orient and connect were carefully chosen words because you can orient and connect both virtually and in reality. So these are behaviors. You have to reach out and orient yourself and connect with people. Over the course of the last few years, Joel has been doing some research, and here are some lessons that he offers up from that research that he thinks will give you some hints about how to meet this increasing wave of change, how to build institutions that will optimize our efforts to improve and be successful. First of all, he says there has to be a shared vision. You have to have a vision that co-evolves. If you look at the wonderful example of Barcelona 5.0, that is going to co-evolve across a variety of people, a variety of organizations, a variety of entities in the city that will be pushing each other together upward. Or, perhaps, I hope not, but they could also be working against each other because they have no head. They have a common interest. They want their city to be wonderful. But they have no boss. They have no set of rules. They have no structure that binds them together. It has to be these interests. So you have to have a shared vision. You have to have leadership through influence rather than authority. And I can't emphasize how important that is. It's no longer because I can control you that you're going to help me do what I need to do. You're going to believe in me, or not me perhaps, but your leadership. Your leaders are going to have credibility. You're going to think, yes, they know what they're doing. Yes, they're wise. Yes, they're democratic. All of these kinds of things. And we've seen recently how that's played out in the world. So that leadership through influence rather than authority is important. There are core and periphery dances, which is a fancy way of saying that in these organizations, there is a center and there are things around the side. If you remember the Barcelona slides again, you had a core, and then you had things that appeared around the side of that city, of that map, and the way they organized it. Those are all stakeholders. They will shift from time to time. The core could be over here today and over here tomorrow, depending on what problem you're trying to resolve. But they are all in the game, and they are all stakeholders, and somehow we have to look across them to see if we can find common interests. There's internal alignment for lateral alignment. I don't know if any of you have ever been part of an organization where you had to go and bargain with the people in the organization so that then you could go out and talk to the people that the organization wanted to interface with. Has anybody ever been in a situation like that where I think often in clubs or organizations where you have an external interest and some internal structure, the bargaining inside the organization with your own people, with your friends, is often harder than the bargaining with people on the outside of the organization. So you have to be careful of that. You have to have forums for structural wholes. Now, a structural hole is a place where there isn't a structure to support the discussion that has to happen between two parties or two individuals. And so somehow you have to look for those structural holes, and you have to fill them, because these people need to talk. Now, often they find each other. Often in organizations today especially, there are people who are finding a way around the in-place structure, and they're working through the system in a different way, and they're finding the people that they need to talk to. They are actually filling their structural holes, so you need to be looking for them. You need to have protocols and standards. That means that you need to have agreed upon not imposed, but agreed upon ways of interacting with each other. And you need to do that up front. So before things happen, before things fall apart, you need to say, one of our protocol rules is to share information with everyone. If we're going to have a meeting, everyone will get the announcement. If you're going to, consider everyone's interest, then everyone has to be at the table. Those are the kinds of things that need to be set up ahead of time and then can be used to help leverage activities. And finally, trust is a major foundation for partnership. Trust is critical. I suspect trust also doesn't happen. I think all of us have experienced the fact that trust can be built up over years and broken in a heartbeat. And you need to be very aware of what a valuable commodity trust is, because it becomes even more valuable in the 21st century organizations that we're trying to build. So what are some ways that we can get people to do this? Well, people can come into this shared space with different interests, and they can work through some of these processes together. We have to also probably understand that the same kinds of responses are not going to be there for everybody. So this is going to be a change in some of the patterns of equity and behavior that we've come to expect over time. There's going to be a shift and a revaluation of interests from independence to interdependence. So let me show you the next slide. This is a model that one of the folks from our lab developed for our presentation earlier this week, taking the term, and I'm sure I will not say it properly, but Tawantinsuyu, is that close? At any rate, from the Quechua, meaning four parts together. And what we were pointing to by using that phrase is that you have four parts in most relationships. You have a behavioral piece, a structural piece, a strategic piece, and a cultural piece. As you can see from the arrows, they're all interdependent. But culture is going to take from all of these things and become very strong. So we need to be aware of the relationships between these four parts. Okay? So if we go quickly on to the next one, here are some ways to align stakeholders. So if you're involved in one of these big organizations, here's a process for aligning stakeholders. First of all, you want to map them and find out who they are. You want to find out what their interests are so that you can go back and build a common interest. You want to ensure that there's leadership, facilitation, and expertise. You have to build trust, and you have to build credibility. You have to construct a shared vision. That is not easy. None of this is easy. It takes a long, long time. But with that shared vision, you can then move forward much more rapidly and with assurance. You need to charter forums, put together mechanisms, put in place places where people can talk, places where they can share information, and you need to establish protocols and standards, and you need to work for continuous improvement. Now, some of that we're seeing in this Fab Lab movement. I'm going to skip the next couple sharing. But I would like to just talk about the one that starts relationships among labs. That one. Okay. So we did some research with the U.S. Fab Lab Network, and Joel built a new way of measuring this. These hexagonal shapes that you see, are colored according to that scale up there, and they reflect individual responses. So in an organization built from people who are from different places, different organizations, different interests, all of those kinds of things, this methodology allows you to see where they all stand. And it's a very exciting methodology. If you have questions, I'll be glad to talk to you about it later. But what you can see from this is not only where these people in this organization stand on certain questions that we ask them. For example, this one up here in the upper left corner is on collaboration among U.S. Fab Labs. And you can see that there is some disagreement there. There's some bright green, there's some dark red, which means that they've had a completely negative experience with collaboration. This kind of methodology gives you a way of taking a snapshot of your organization, especially one that isn't part of a joint network. Next one, please. So here are some analogies that we got from the people that we were interviewing about this network. And I think it's interesting to see how people visualize the Fab Lab, the US Fab Lab network in this case. It's like a butterfly unfolding, but it hasn't figured out yet how to smooth out the crinkles in its wings, let alone fly. I won't read them all, but it's a press fit box. For those of you who are Fab Labbers, you know what a press fit box is, but it's a press fit box with no opening. You can't get into it. It's like a big litter of newborn puppies, not really knowing where they're going, but full of energy and wanting to go somewhere. It's like a hydra, and head 1 needs to know what head 9 is doing. It's like an unfinished sculpture, still rough around the edges, but it looks like a work of art. These were ways that people described this new emerging structure of the Fab Lab network. And I think it's really important to see that there is a huge variety here. And that's exactly the reality you're facing as you go forward in the 21st century, trying to build these new organizations, to build these new patterns that we all need in our systems and our societies. So thank you very much.
So we've had a lot of technical engineering today. Now we have the social engineering to build the systems we're trying to do. And in a sense, what Betty just described in much more detail is what's been happening all week. So questions, comments? I have one. How do you teach this? I can think of lots of examples close to home where these have been learned through arrows in the back and wearing out seats of pants. How do you do this so it's not all just done by accident?
Well, I actually do teach this. And one of the things that I find is really useful is having people actually have a scenario to work through that they are not personally involved in, so that the arrows in the back don't particularly might not be as painful. But it does take some practice. It does take some shifting how you see things. So you have to go like those analogies with the puppy or the butterfly, and you have to look at the organizations you're involved in and shift the way you look at them. And then begin to employ some of these tactics that we talked about, building trust, building forums, those kinds of things. That's how I do it.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Betty. Now, to wrap this session up before then the Fab Academy graduation and the inauguration, which we'll explain after this, I'm delighted to have two of our favorite people, Professor Thorsten Sigfusson with Frosty Gislason. They're at a volcanic isle in Vestmannaeyjar off the coast of Iceland. And among our favorite Fab Labs are the network in Iceland, where the whole country has been a laboratory for how to do innovation. And it's driven by the two people you see there. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to the audience, mute us, and hand off to you.
Hello, can you hear us now?
Now you're fine. Please go ahead.
Great. I was going to say, good afternoon, Lima. We are talking from about 6,000 miles away in Iceland. I'll start my talk now, and have the first slide, please. Our Innovation Center in Iceland started about 4 years ago and operates under the Ministry of Industry. And one of the best things in our life was to get to know Fab Lab and you, Neil. Thank you for your leadership, Neil. Next slide, please. Our mission of the center is to strengthen the competitive position of Icelandic businesses and increase the quality of life, to diffuse knowledge and give support to entrepreneurs, growth companies, etc., and to excel in technology research, product development, analysis and testing. Next, please. The core values are sort of symbolized in our logo. It is growth, implementing seed activities, partnership and cooperation, creativity and invention, technology and knowledge. Next slide, please. And We are a leading R&D and business support institute in Iceland. We focus on R&D technology transfer, etc., etc. Education, and this is why I think, among other things, Fab Lab is very important for us. We do consulting in order to increase innovation, productivity and competitiveness, and my belief is that Fab Lab has given us a very important tool in our toolbox. Next slide, please. You can here see the centers in Iceland, the various centers of our innovation center, and then you can also see the Fab Lab. And the Fab Lab headquarters is in the volcanic island of Vestmannaeyjar, seen in the south, on the south part of Iceland, down there. Next slide, please. We have a lot of interviews every year, about 8,000 free support interviews in 2010. We have workshops and courses for the general public and SMEs. And above all, we have now Fab Lab. Next slide, please. So the entrepreneurs and the small and medium enterprises services are like a policy advice on various support and innovation and improved operation conditions. We have an extensive internet information services, publications on management, marketing and more. And we are the host for the so-called Enterprise Europe Network. Next slide, please. One of the most important things that we have done in the recession that is hitting Iceland, and I can hear now and see that it's hitting like Southern Europe right now, and maybe the US also, but the incubator centers support and they facilitate for startup companies working on innovative business ideas, and we have about 10 years of experience at the original center in Reykjavik. We have increased the focus on incubator centers, and it's very important for us to have created about 6 new centers opened in the past years, really opened during the recession, and the Innovation Center of Iceland now operates 9 incubators in cooperation with others. And what we really did, that we talked to the banks and asked the banks to help us with using some of their housing, using some of the part of their headquarters to run incubator centers. And I would say this is some of the best successes we've had. Next slide, please. The support for success is such that we have created about 250 new jobs in new centers in this lifetime span of October 2008. Don't forget that Icelanders are only 300,000 people. 300,000 people. So it's been a boost for new companies. It's been available access to specialized workforce. And now, as I speak, about 100 businesses are operating in the 9 centers with approximately 300 employees in a nation of 300,000. Next slide, please. The Fab Lab in Iceland is some of the best thing that's happened to our institute. And I would like to use the opportunity again, Neil. Thank you for the leadership. Thank you for what you've done for the world when it comes to Fab Lab. We have a global network, of course. We feel that we're part of the global network. We have a small workshop with computer control tools with the aim to make almost everything, as you know. We are open all working days for the general public, students, entrepreneurs, small companies, and the Westman Islands, the Vestmannaeyjar operation, headed by my good friend here behind me, Frosty, is the hub. And then we have 2 other places in Akranes and Söðarkrókur. Next slide, please. The Fab Lab is a very important contribution to innovation, and I can just give you an example in how popular it is that in the Westman Islands, the Vestmannaeyjar, the population, 7% of the population is visiting Fab Lab every month. And another very important thing is that to have access to the Fab Academy in a remote area like Westman Islands, Vestmannaeyjar, with very limited higher education provided locally, is certainly crucial for future development. It's crucial. So I'm looking towards the Fab Lab Academy with great hopes. Here you can see Frosty and Anil Gupta. I think this was taken in India. Frosty brings some coal to India, I guess. And a wonderful name. Frosty means a cool guy. Next slide, please. Let me tell you that new emerging companies in Iceland, like the company Remake Electric, are using Fab Lab technological approach. So the Fab Lab culture is really being propagated into the new company Remake. Remake makes intelligent fuses, very intelligent fuses that can tell a house owner what's happening in a given breakdown of electricity. Next slide, please. A multimedia company in Westman Island like Sigva and Smart Media, they use Fab Lab to make the Folk Museum more interactive. And you can actually see there at the Folk Museum, there is a very interesting an old radio-controlled, what would you say, Frosty, walkie-talkie? Yeah. With, where you can really learn interactively about the history of the Westman area. And the next slide, I show you Vera Þórðardóttir, a prize winner at the Institute of Marangoni in London. What was that? Yeah, she's a very creative artist. She's actually using our Fab Lab approach to automate her unique production of garments. She makes her garments from silicone. And let's see the next slide. Because this is the new silicone fashion, it's taking the world by surprise. She simply makes this from silicone, and what we are really doing now with Fab Lab is to automate the production process of these garments. Let's take another view of her garments. This is a very exciting garment from silicone. And the next one, this is the one. Two more interesting garments. And let's stop there, because here is the fact that Lady Gaga, she fell for Vera's fashion. And Lady Gaga has been helping Vera with introducing her fashion to the world. So now Frosty and his people in the Westman Eyre are simply trying to help Vera to automate the production of these garments. And my last slide is the next slide, showing my conclusion. Fab Lab in Iceland is helping to advance technological awareness. We have sown seeds. We see knowledge of digital fabrication technologies gradually increasing, and we know that this will lead to increased competitiveness of our nation. So in the volcanic island of Iceland, we're witnessing a new kind of eruption. We call it Fab Lab. Thank you and bless you. Bye-bye.
Questions about Iceland? Let me start with the most important one. How's your daughter?
She is very fine, thank you very much. She is now
8 days old.
8 days old, yeah. We are celebrating her birthday today. 8 days. Thank you very much.
Questions? So, let me ask you to project ahead. We heard about canceling Barcelona 4.0 and creating 5.0. Barcelona 4.0 is the current one. 5.0 is what Tony described. Try to project ahead. You've had a lot of success introducing Fab Labs into Iceland, and another very interesting story you might mention is what you've done on the hydrogen economy in Iceland.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, try to project ahead, if I could, 5 or 10 years from now, how is the roadmap you're on going to play out?
Well, let me connect Fab Lab and hydrogen economy, because I would like to use the philosophy of Fab Lab to help us with increasing the may I say, quality and price of fuel cells. So in 10 years from now, I think will have made advances in fuel cell research using the Fab Lab approach. But generally, Neil, I think that what will happen to our small and growing economy is that Fab Lab will simply leave its mark on the, may I say, the literacy, the computer, the digital literacy of our industry. Very important.
And by the way, as background, you may have seen pictures. You may have seen pictures of Iceland as perhaps the only country on Earth with a hydrogen economy where you can pull your car up to a hydrogen filling station. And that was another of the projects from Forstendrove. Iceland really is this remarkable laboratory for invention like that. Any final questions? If not, well, thank you. And we'll also note that today you had the highest quality video coming from the volcanic island on the west of Ireland, unlike, say, the big institutions in Cambridge, Mass. So there's a lesson about not just catching up, but kind of skipping over where we are today. So with that, well, thank you.
Thank you all.